What if there were no borders? No invisible lines slicing the earth into pieces. No walls separating hope from opportunity. No passports defining who deserves more and who deserves less. Just one planet, one sky, one ocean, one shared destiny. What if the entire world was governed by a single global government? Not tomorrow, not suddenly, but slowly, intelligently, by choice. For a moment, forget politics, forget history, forget fear. Just imagine. Because every great change in human history began as an impossible idea. There was a time when nations did not exist, when borders were unknown, when humans lived as tribes, connected by survival, not flags. The idea of countries is younger than we think, but the idea of unity is ancient. Philosophers dreamed of it, religions hinted at it, scientists now see its necessity. So what would truly change if the world became one? Let's begin with the loudest word in human history: war. In a one-world government, war between nations would vanish. No rival armies, no foreign enemies, no justification for invasion. There would be no us versus them, because there would be no them. Military forces would transform, not into tools of destruction, but into guardians of peace. Trillions of dollars, once burned on weapons, would be redirected to education, to medicine, to rebuilding broken regions, to protecting the planet. Children would grow up without learning the sound of bombs. Entire generations would know war only as a warning from the past, not a threat to their future. Now imagine justice. Today, justice depends on geography. The law protects some lives more than others. Some crimes matter more depending on where they happen. Under one global government, law would be universal. The same rights, the same protections, the same human value, everywhere. No one would be illegal on their own planet. Human rights would not be promises, they would be guarantees. Genocide would not be debated, it would be prevented. Suffering would not be ignored because it happens far away. There would be no far away. Now imagine the economy. One coordinated global system. No trade wars, no economic sanctions used as weapons. No nations starving others through policy. Resources would be managed for survival, not dominance. Food exists today to feed every human alive, yet millions starve. In a unified world, hunger would not be a mystery. It would be a failure, and failures would be corrected. Extreme poverty would not be tolerated because it weakens the whole system. A global minimum standard of living would exist, not as charity, but as stability. Now imagine work. Automation and artificial intelligence are already changing labor. In a divided world, technology creates fear. In a united world, technology creates freedom. Work would be distributed more fairly. Basic needs would be guaranteed. Creativity would become the primary human role. Humans would work to build meaning, not just to survive. Now imagine science. All human knowledge, shared. No secret research for power, no medical breakthroughs locked behind profit. A cure discovered in one place would save lives everywhere, immediately. Pandemics would be contained faster. Diseases would be tracked globally. Prevention would replace reaction. And climate change would no longer be debated. The planet does not care about politics. The atmosphere does not recognize borders. The oceans do not stop at coastlines. A global government would enforce environmental protection as law, not suggestion. Forests would be preserved because they belong to everyone. Oceans would be defended because they support all life. The Earth would no longer be exploited by competing nations, but protected by united humanity. Now imagine space. Space exploration would accelerate beyond anything we know today, not as competition, not as national pride, but as survival. Mars would not belong to a flag. It would belong to humanity, Asteroids would be studied not for profit, but for protection. The universe would no longer see divided nations. It would see one species stepping forward. Now imagine culture. Languages would not disappear. Traditions would not vanish. Identities would not be erased. Unity does not mean uniformity. It means cooperation. Cultural diversity would be protected by global law. Education would teach children that difference is not danger. Religion would no longer be weaponized. Race would no longer justify inequality. Gender would no longer limit potential. Humanity would become the primary identity. But now, we must speak honestly. Power. One global government would hold more power than any empire in history. And power always carries danger. If corrupted, a one-world government could become the greatest tyranny ever known. There would be nowhere to escape, no rival system, no opposing nation. That is the risk. So such a government could never be centralized. Power would have to be distributed. Leadership would rotate. Decisions would be transparent. Local cultures would govern themselves within global laws. Artificial intelligence could assist, but never rule. Human rights would be untouchable. Freedom of thought, speech, belief, and movement would be absolute. Unity without freedom is not peace, it is control. Now imagine psychology. Humans evolved to think in groups, tribes, nations, flags. A one-world government requires a new mindset, a new story. Not my country first, but humanity first. That shift is not political. It is emotional. It requires maturity, trust, responsibility. It requires us to see strangers as extensions of ourselves. And that may be the hardest part. So is a one-world government possible? Technologically, yes. Economically, yes. Scientifically, yes. Emotionally, not yet. But history shows something important. Every global challenge pushes humanity closer together. Climate change, pandemics, artificial intelligence, space. The future demands unity, whether we choose it or not. Because in the end, there is no second Earth, no backup civilization, no reset button, just one planet, one species, one chance. The question is not whether the world could be governed as one. The real question is, can humanity grow wise enough to govern itself? But there is one question we still haven't answered. Not about politics, not about systems, but about humans themselves. Because even the most perfect system will fail if the minds running it do not evolve. A one-world government would not erase human nature. Fear would remain. Ego would remain. Greed would remain. The difference is, there would be nowhere to hide them. Every decision would affect everyone. Every mistake would echo across the planet. Responsibility would no longer be local, it would be global. Leadership would change forever. Leaders would no longer serve flags or borders, they would serve humanity. Every choice about energy, technology, or the environment would be measured not by profit, but by consequence. Politics would slow down, but wisdom would finally matter. Truth would become essential. In a united world, lies would be dangerous because they would divide what must stay united. Education would become humanity's strongest defense, not to create workers, not to create followers, but to create thinkers. Children would be taught how to question, how to reason, how to understand complexity. Conflict would not disappear, but it would transform. No longer violence, no longer destruction. Conflict would become dialogue, law, correction, a signal that the system needs adjustment, not collapse. Technology would stand at the center of everything. Artificial intelligence would manage systems, predict risks, and optimize resources. But it would never rule, because intelligence without ethics is dangerous. Human judgment, empathy, and responsibility would remain essential. Success would be redefined, not by wealth, not by power, but by well-being. A society would be judged by how it treats its weakest members: mental health, environmental health, social stability. Progress would finally mean human flourishing. Decisions would be made for generations, not headlines. The future would finally have a voice. But let's be honest, this world would not be easy. Unity demands maturity. It requires restraint, patience, the ability to listen. A one-world government is not about control. It is about responsibility. The responsibility to not dominate, to not exploit, to not destroy what we barely understand. And that is the real challenge. Not building the system, but becoming the species capable of running it. Because the technology exists, the resources exist, the knowledge exists. What remains uncertain is us.